This is Nietzsche, the Gay Science, Part 1. Thank you. All right, gay or joyous science. Good. So today we're going to look at two things. We're going to look at the death of God, the source of joy that it gives Nietzsche and why. And then we're going to take a little look at something you might not have read yet, and this is the ethics of suffering that Nietzsche presents us. Okay, so that's what, and so that's, I don't think you've read that yet, but you will at home. So I'll tell you what pages. So last time we talked about this, right? We are now entering a very different era. Up until now, happiness was connected, at least before Kant, we saw that God was always to a certain degree part of our happiness, right? I mean, we started with Ecclesiastes, where the attitude of receptivity towards life, right, or towards what Ecclesiastes called the gift of God. Then we talked about the Upanishads, finding God within, the Tao Te Ching, right, connecting to the intelligence of nature. And then with Kant, now entering the moderns, right, we're leaving behind this kind of religious worldview and we're entering a much more secular worldview, right? So with Kant, we already have a critique of happiness, right? There's something higher than happiness, and it's not God, right? It's the moral law which is within us, right? And now with Nietzsche, this is the climax, right? This is the climax of godless happiness. So we're really going into the two extremes, right? So that if you're anywhere on the spectrum of atheism to believer, you will find something in this class at some point, right? Oh, we skipped Al-Ghazali, sorry. Yes, Al-Ghazali, purifying the heart to allow the light of God to shine through, right? So you saw most of the authors we talked about had some kind of metaphysical connection, right? It was always trying to tap into a dimension which is beyond the mere physical. With Nietzsche, we're going to simply dwell in the physical and find our happiness within the physical realm. But most of the authors we talked about, including Kant to a certain degree, talk about tapping into a deeper realm in order to be happy. Not Nietzsche, right? So with Nietzsche, this is the key, by the way, of existentialist philosophy, right? Existentialism is all about finding the beyond within, the reality, right? We're not going to escape reality anymore to find meaning. We're going to find meaning within the confines of reality, within the limitations of our life, right? So that is a key point in existentialism in general, and most existentialists from Nietzsche, who is kind of the father of existentialism, to Kierkegaard, to Marcel, to a certain degree Levinas, right, which you're studying, Ramos, and Critchell also you studied. You see how even Levinas, right, everything is within, right? You find God in the other, right? So same thing, right? So now we're really entering this notion of how can we find happiness within the confines, the limitation of our finite existence without tapping into a deeper reality. So of course, before we can find this happiness within the human condition, we have to get rid of this deeper reality. And so this is what Nietzsche calls the death of God, right? We need to kill this God, or this God anyways is dying. This is what Nietzsche is saying. God is dead. He's not killing him. He's just saying it's passé. We're moving beyond this, right? So before we can really taste life, we really have to stop, getting high, basically. That's what Nietzsche is saying, right? Let's stop getting high on religion, trying to escape life, or trying to go to deeper dimension. We need to cut off ties with this deeper dimension, and hence the importance of the death of God, right? Before we can fully enter life, before we can fully inhabit life, God must die, because God is that which is constantly pulling us out towards himself, right, to a certain degree. So that's what he says here on 279, right? The meaning of our cheerfulness, the greatest recent event, that God is dead and that the belief in the Christian God has become unbelievable, right? So for him, this is a source of great joy. Finally, that God is dead. Phew, I can breathe, I can exhale. I don't have to be constantly shielded, forbidden entry into life. I can finally relax and enter life and live fully without any kind of what do you call this? The horses have, blinders. No blinders, no restrictions. I'm not anymore in the straitjacket of Christianity. I can really enter life and taste life without, right? Because there's two problems, right, with Christianity and religion in general, actually. Number one, everything is forbidden. Number two, there's a better reality. This is the main two criticisms. If you read Nietzsche, these are the main two criticisms he makes of religion. Number one, religion forbids everything, forbids the true entry into life. You cannot fully penetrate life because of all of these rules and regulations which are keeping you from making mistakes, from sinning, from pleasure, from this, from that. How can you live if everything is forbidden? If you cannot go here, you cannot do that, you cannot date this person, you cannot wear these clothes, you cannot eat this food. What kind of life is this, says Nietzsche, where everything is forbidden? This is a hatred of life. And so he's saying a lot of these rules that are imposed upon us by religion is coming from a place of hatred and a place of fear and a place of what he calls nihilism, right? We do not, religion hates life, and that is why it forbids us entry into life. That's the take of Nietzsche, right? And of course, the other thing that religion does is saying, there's a better reality. Focus on that. We saw this, right? The Upanishads, Tao Te Ching, even Ecclesiastes to a certain degree, always focusing our gaze to a deeper reality rather than really embracing or facing this reality, right? So Nietzsche, so make sure you write these down. These are the two main criticisms, which for Nietzsche are keeping us from living, and thereby keeping us from finding the joy of life, right? So I think he puts it, what is the expression he uses? Page 32. This religion of joy, right? The joy, finding joy, period, right? We cannot find joy if we're always constricted or if we're always escaping, period. We will never taste the joy of life, the joy of existence, if we're always scared to enter or if we're always on a path of escape. Everything clear so far? This is very important. So hence, right, the importance for the death of God, which for Nietzsche will lead us finally to a state which he calls over here on page 280, if you go to from the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right, those who have killed God, he says, or those who are proclaiming the death of God, he says, they are not at all sad and gloomy. This is not a sad event, right, but rather like a new, right, scarcely describable kind of light, right, happiness, relief, exhilaration, encouragement, dawn. That's what happens when you get rid of the shackles of religion. There is a relief. And I think some of you, right, when I teach philosophy of religion, I get a lot of feedback on that level, right? Many of the students that I've known, when they come from a very narrow religious background, often can describe exactly in these terms the feeling they felt when they decided to pave their own path, right? A kind of light, happiness, relief, exhilaration, encouragement, right? Dawn. So this is really an experience which I think a lot of people in this college have experienced, right? Throwing off the shackles of a religion which has become too narrow, right? I'm not saying throw off the shackles of religion. I'm saying Nietzsche is saying throwing off the shackles of a religion that has become too narrow, too asphyxiating in many of us, right, has been felt as an event which is full of light, happiness, relief, exhilaration, encouragement, dawn, right? So he's talking about something which a lot of us can relate to, right? And then he says, and of course, why are we so happy? Because, and this is the last line of that section, the sea, the open sea, lies open again. Perhaps there has never yet been such an open sea, right? Life lies ahead. Finally, we can explore it unimpeded, without guilt, without shame, without fear of stumbling, of sinning, of suffering. We are not afraid anymore. We will enter life. And this, says Nietzsche, will be the source of our deepest joy, right? So that's the first part, right? That's the first part we needed to talk about, which we talked a little bit about last time. Now, getting to the second part you haven't read yet, but which I thought we would cover because we have some time. This is what we must, so now we have thrown off religion, including for Nietzsche morality, Western morality, which is based on religion. We are now at the edge of the sea, right? And we know, and we must know this, that to enter life there will be joy, but there will also be pain. We must be prepared as we enter the ocean of life that it's not going to be necessarily easy. In fact, if we want easy, let us stay on the shore in the confines of religion, right? One of the best, deepest benefits of religion, if I'm going to just say a few words in parentheses from Nietzsche, right? One of the greatest benefits of religion is that it keeps you safe, right? It keeps you safe from making stupid mistakes. There is a wisdom in religion, right? It keeps you safe. Religion is really structured. Its reason is really to help us navigate the ocean of life without falling in the water, right? That's the idea. What Nietzsche is saying, yeah, but the water, there's so much to explore there. That's basically what he's saying, right? Most of us are in a nice boat, a cruise ship sometimes, if you come from the big, traditional religions, right? You have a cruise ship. You know you can navigate with your ship. It's going to be storms, but you can have some stability in your ship. What Nietzsche is saying is, yeah, but you're missing out on all of the treasures of the ocean. Jump in with me, he says, right? So it depends on who you are, right? Again, philosophy is not it is not without risks to teach philosophy, right? I might make some of you jump off the ship, and then you will come to me 20 years later, heroin addicts, tell me that I ruined your life with this particular class on Nietzsche, right? So we need to be aware. Philosophy is dangerous, right? So I'm giving you the two paths. If you want safe, structured, wise, happy, stay on the ship, right? But if, like Nietzsche, you want to jump in the water and really experience life in all of its depths and in all of its heights, then you need to be aware that to jump in the ocean is not going to be like staying on the ship or staying on the beach. It's going to be frightening, horrifying, painful, but also amazingly beautiful. That's what Nietzsche is saying, right? How many of you went snorkeling ever? That's what Nietzsche is talking about, right? You're going to go snorkeling, but there are some, sharks, whales. The ocean is not all beauty, right? But it is amazingly beautiful. And do you want to experience that, right? So that's what he's saying, right? We need to jump off the ship, but we need to be aware, and I'm warning you here, you will experience much deeper suffering, according to Nietzsche, than if you had stayed on the land or if you had stayed on the ship, right? You will experience deeper suffering, but then Nietzsche says, you will also experience deeper joy. So it's really your choice, right? Okay, so let's see what he says. We need to beware of not entering the ocean with these. There are two things we need to leave behind if we're going to properly enter the ocean of life. Number one, he calls the religion of pity. Number two, he calls the religion of comfortableness. Once we have abandoned these two religions, right, we will attain what Nietzsche calls the religion of joy. Okay, so three things. Religion of pity, we need to abandon. Religion of comfortableness, we need to abandon. Only then will we be able to be part, to become adepts of the religion of joy. So let me summarize the religion of pity. This is actually so interesting. How many of you are the type of person that if somebody's going through something, you want to fix their problems? Let's raise your hands. I'm one of those. 1, 2, that's it. 3, sort of. Okay, you feel like they cannot be suffering right now. Let me fix this, right? Sit down and let me fix your life, right? I do that. Like, I will sit you down and be like, look, I see very clearly what you should do, A, B, C. Go and do it, right? So Nietzsche is actually going to say this, you don't do that, right? Do not do this. Let me explain. What he's going to say, which is really, really, for me, it was eye-opening, right? He said, when someone is suffering, right, this is sacred ground. You do not enter. When someone is suffering, this is sacred ground, and this is an experience which they actually need to go through, and you need to respect that. Okay, let me say that again. For Nietzsche, whatever that person is going through, number one, it's sacred ground, you don't go in and try to fix it. Number two, it is actually something that they need to go through, and you need to respect that journey that they are on. In other words, especially when we become parents, we don't want our children to suffer, and we love fidgeting when they come home late or whatever. Nietzsche would say, your child needs to go through this right now. Leave him be. Nietzsche would say, if you're in partnership with someone who's going through their journey of chaos, right? Nietzsche would say, step back, let them go on their journey, right? They need this journey. No matter how painful it is, they need this. Let's look at the quote. This is very, very interesting. Page 269. Go to, Okay, let's just start at the top and then we'll skip. Are you there with me? The will to suffer? Who is there? See if you have your text. Who has their text? Who has 269? One, two? Okay, a couple people. Good. The will to suffer, those who feel pity. That's the title. Is it good for you yourselves to be above all full of pity? He's going to say no. And is it good for those who suffer? Neither, right? If you have pity on someone and you want to help them, it's neither good for them nor for you. Continues, but let us leave the first question unanswered. Our personal and profoundest suffering is incomprehensible and inaccessible to almost everyone. Right here, he's talking about when we go through something or when someone else goes through something. It must remain inaccessible. In fact, not only cannot be accessed, but it must remain so. We need to respect that space. We need to respect it as a sacred space, a sacred time that they're going through. Continuing. Here we remain hidden from our neighbor, even if we eat from one pot. But whenever people notice that we suffer, they interpret our suffering superficially. Okay? So in other words, someone sees us suffering, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, let me help you. Can you hear some advice? Don't do that, right? Because any interpretation that you have of someone else's suffering is going to be superficial. They're going through something powerful and deep right now that you are right now messing up with your help. That's basically the idea. Don't mess up their process. Continuing. It is the very essence of the emotion of pity that it strips away from the suffering of others whatever is distinctively personal. In other words, pity actually devalues their suffering. This is so profound. Let me say that again. To pity someone is to devalue what they're going through, is to make what they're going through small, pathetic, miserable, and here you are, you want to help. No, they're going through something deep, profound, and way above you right now. So just stay away, right? That's what's going on. Continuing. Our benefactors, quote unquote, are more than our enemies, people who make our worth and will smaller. Anytime you try to help someone, you're making them small when actually they were going through something deep right now. You've made it pathetic, right? Continuing. When people try to benefit someone in distress, the intellectual frivolity with which those moved by pity assume the role of fate is for the most part outrageous. This is great, right? They're telling you what to do with your life now. They're assuming the role of fate, or you're doing that. You're telling them what you're becoming fate, right? And he says this is outrageous. Now this is the part I wanted to focus on. One simply knows nothing of the whole inner sequence and intricacies that are distress for me or for you. There's something profound happening. He says the whole economy of my soul and the balance affected by distress. And now here's what you underline. The way new springs and needs break open, the way in which old wounds are healing, the way whole periods of the past are shed, all such things that may be involved in distress are of no concern to our dear pitying friends because they wish to help, right? Okay, so what he's saying is something very profound is going on whenever someone is suffering, whether it's you or a friend of yours. And he's saying this is actually something which is happening, which is rejuvenating them. This is a process which is transforming them. There is an alchemy of the body and the soul in their suffering that you're messing up right now with your pity, right? You need to let them go through this alchemy. It's like, you know how you have you know how they make diamonds, right? It's like, what is it? You need a hard, very compression, right, of I guess carbon, right? And then eventually the compression makes it become diamond. You're the person who takes away the compression so the diamond never happens, right? It's like, or you're baking a cake. Anybody do that? You the guys don't bake, I know it. But if you were, right, you know that you can't open the oven all the time because it's never going to rise, right? You're messing up the bread or the cake. This is what you're doing when you're trying to help someone. They're rising over there in their oven, right? They're becoming someone new. They're going through this rejuvenating process, and you're messing it up constantly, touching. And a serious question, or just your hand sitting there? Okay, good. All right. Okay, so, and he's saying, right, this is what is actually going on. New springs are opening up, right? Something is opening up within them. Right? There is a new life which is being birthed, right? There is old wounds which are healing. The past is being shed. They're like a snake shedding the old skin, becoming something new. And you are pitying them like an idiot, completely unaware of what's really going on, which is amazing, right? So that's the idea. That's the first thing he says, right? We need to forfeit not only for ourselves, but for others, right? He continues on page 269, still a few lines down. We have no, just where we left off actually, and these people who wish to help have no thought of the personal necessity of distress. We need to go through distress, right? Although terrors, deprivations, impoverishments, midnights, adventures, risks, and blunders are as necessary for me and for you as are their opposites. This is again the very beautiful Stoic, right, perspective of Nietzsche, that both the beautiful moments of life and the painful moments of life are meaningful, are right, are worth living. So he's saying, right, when we're deprived or in terror or impoverished or go through night or we're doing this adventure, taking risks, blundering, making mistakes, this is as important as the opposite. Peace, right? Feeling safe, being nourished, feeling wealthy, going through the day, right? So this is also good, right? He's not saying we should always suffer, right? He's saying this suffering is as important as the moments of bliss that we go through. We need to embrace both. Hence, right, what he's saying, the famous Stoic quote that is in going through his whole work, amor fati, right, A-M-O-R, write this down, it's in your test, F-A-T-I, right, amor fati, to love my fate wherever I am, is meaningful, rich, part of my, or the alchemy of my process, right? Okay, so this is the first thing. If you want to enter the ocean of life, if you want to take the, how shall I put it, if you want to accept Nietzsche's invitation to leave behind, right, the safety of religion, because it is safe to be in a religious environment. I really, if you can do it, you know, because it is really a beautiful structured environment, like a ship on high seas, right? Why would you want to, anyways, I'm oscillating between, I don't know who to believe, right? But I'm torn myself, right? Nietzsche is very inviting, but also the big cruise ship of religion is also very inviting to me, right? So you choose. I'm not going to choose for you, right? So that's the first thing we need to be ready to shed before we enter the ocean, is the religion of pity. Let us stop pitying each other. Yes, go ahead.
When he talks about going against the rules, I guess, is he talking also about like the laws of the country, or is he just talking about religion? The rules of religion?
So he says religion, but then morality is based on religion. So all these moral rules that we have. So for example, so now I'm not going to say he says we should kill or cheat, right, and so forth. But he's saying we need to think on a different level than good, evil, good, evil. You see, I think we talked about that last time. He's looking at a more art-based approach to life rather than good, evil, good, evil. He's looking at live your life artfully, right? So in other words, whatever you're doing, you want to put your whole being into it. You want to be completely passionate about it. If you live like this, putting your whole being in whatever you're in, you can't sin. You can't commit a moral wrong. Let's imagine a relationship. What's the problem with relationships? Why do people cheat? Just give you one example. Why do people cheat?
Commitment issues.
What?
Commitment issues.
Okay, so they're kind of with the person, but then, you know, there's a few other people over there that look very attractive. And they're a little bit there, but then they're also a little bit there, right? You see how the problem is not the cheating. The problem is they are not fully here, right? If you are somebody who is your morals, right, or what is guiding you in life is I'm going to be fully into whatever I'm doing, in that context, you will always be a good lover, right? You will never cheat. You will never lie because you're fully there, right? So what Nietzsche is saying, let's drop these dichotomies of cheating, not cheating. Live, and you will actually be even better than what moral people are telling you to do or not do. You see what I'm saying? If you're fully living the relationship and your whole heart is pouring into the relationship, you can't cheat, right? It's not even about should I. You're completely, right? So that's the idea. So you see how what he's trying to do is to get us to a level of living life which is more profound than the superficial. This is right, this is not right, this is right, this is not right. He's saying to the degree that you live everything with your whole heart, you can't sin. That's the idea, right? What makes us sin is half-assedness. I think I have defined sin as half-heartedness, right? Anything you are half-hearted, doing, you're already entering that realm. So I think that's where he's getting it right. He's not saying kill and but he's saying we need to live lofty. This is actually very Christian, right? If you follow the teachings of Jesus, oh yeah, we studied John a little bit, right? This is not about right or wrong. This is about love, right? Living everything from a place of love. If you live everything from a place of love, you're not concerned, is this right? Is this wrong? No, you're just going to soar in a way that transcends this, but is even better than these. You see what I'm saying? So in a way, Jesus was, they're kind of similar thinkers, right? He's also saying passion, live fully. At that moment, sin it's not a relevant category for people who live passionately. That's what and Jesus would say, right? Good and evil is not a relevant category for people who live from a place of love. They don't need these categories. They're way up there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's where we are.
So like, if, let's say someone is like very, like they put their whole heart into being a psychopath murderer.
Why is this a consistent question?
I know.
Like all these philosophers say, if this is what you want to do, it's okay to do it. But
I think he's projecting.
How it's okay for them to do it.
That's a good question. It's hard to answer because when you give me extreme examples like that, it's hard because what I would like, of course, there's a complete sick person, but then the murderer in general, I think every type of, if it's a normal murderer, right? Look, for example, at anyone who commits a murder. There's something half-assed about it, right? Because he didn't want to commit it, but he had to commit it, right? And he would have preferred not to commit it. You see what I'm saying? So there's always like this sense that, what?
It does happen every time. Sometimes people just do it because they want to.
I think some people are conditioned, especially at a young age, to see murder as something that is okay, especially if their parents or someone close to them has shown them that experience. A lot of the times the people that become like those psychopaths or those murderers at a young age, they've seen those things happen. Like there's one case where this man murdered his son's mom, and then he thought like that was okay, and then basically the son ended up being murdered.
Okay, so you have to remember what Nietzsche is talking about. He's talking about a passion for life, right? Yeah, no, I get it, yeah. So if you have a passion for life, you can't possibly murder because that's destroying life. You know what I'm saying? So when you're living everything from, I love life. If you love life, you can't sin. That's the idea, right? If I love you, how can I hurt you, right? Or if I love this, right? Or if I love this person, or if I love this country, or anytime you love life, I mean, it's very Christian. I mean, it's turning over in his grave right now as I'm saying this. Like he's like probably growing, boils on his, dead bones, right? But he's sounding a lot like the Christ, right?
What if you murder someone that's actively trying to destroy someone else's life?
That's different because you're still killing life, right? If you're coming from this place, which is a passion for life, you can't kill, even if it's to protect or whatever. You can't do it.
So that's similar to God, right?
Um,
Where you can't kill because that's...
yes, because you have a respect, right, for life, so you can't do it, right? Or you can't steal, you can't cheat, always because you have this sense of the dignity of the human being. But he goes beyond. He loves all life, trees, nature, animals, right? He would be vegan nowadays, right? Yeah. So that's when you come from a state of I love life and I want to really enter life. You don't need morality. You see what I mean? You're above it, right? I think that's where we are. It's very similar to the teachings of Kant and the teachings in the book of John, where when you live from a place of love, you don't need a touch this, don't touch this, eat this, don't. You don't need that. You're in a completely different level.
You don't need a set of laws.
Yes, it's like kids, right? Kids need rules like don't touch this, don't. When you're an adult, you're on a deeper level, right? That's the idea. We have to understand that there's a deeper level of life than the rules. Like Rumi said, right? Or the Sufis used to say, the rules will get you to the gates of the palace, right? I think we talked about this, but only love will let you through, right? So the rules, they teach us to love. But if you already love, like Nietzsche, why do you need the rules? That's the idea, right? All those rules that are in religions are meant, if they haven't forgotten their purpose, which sometimes they do, to teach us how to love. If you're already madly in love with existence like Nietzsche, do you need, or Jesus, right? Do you need those rules? That's the question, right? Does that make sense? Yeah, good. Very good question. Okay, are we ready to leave behind the religion of comfortableness? Okay. So that's the second thing we have to shed if we're going to enter the ocean of life, right? Religion of comfortableness. So this is simply this. This is the fear of suffering yourself, right? So on the one hand, we respect the suffering of others, but we need to also honor and embrace our own suffering and realize that when we suffer, we are in sacred time. We are in a sacred space, and not try to escape it or bash it or avoid it or, try to think it's a bad thing, right? No, I am in sacred time. I'm going to take the time I need to go through this alchemization process and enter my rejuvenation, right? That's what we ought to do when we start to suffer, right? Anytime you're in a crisis, right? Breakup, lost your job, whatever, somebody died, you are in sacred time. And you need to honor that space, right? It's interesting, in the Jewish tradition, they have a whole structure for mourning. First month, you're not allowed to go out and do anything fun. Anyone invites you to party or a date or whatever, you have to refuse because you're in that sacred space, right? Later, right? Yeah, so there are a bunch of stuff that we are forbidden to do in Judaism because it's a respect of that sacred space, right? So the invitation here, what Nietzsche is saying is take that space, honor that space. Don't try to act like nothing's wrong. Don't hide your pain, right? Tell people and then recoil in your sacred space and go through the process, right? That's what he's saying. So let's read what he says here, page 270. Okay, let's just continue where we left off, right? I'm still on 269. Oh yeah, here's one quote. Continuing where we were right before. It never occurs to them that, to put it mystically, the path to one's own heaven always leads through the voluptuousness of one's own hell. Okay, this is both for those who suffer and ourselves, right? We need to understand that the path to our own heaven, it leads through the voluptuousness of our own hell. And then he continues, still on pity, right? Then we'll go to the other one. No, the religion of pity commands them to help and they believe, blah, blah, blah. If you who adhere to this religion have the same attitude towards yourselves, now going to the religion of suffering, right? Or comfortableness that we have to abandon. If you refuse to let your own suffering lie upon you even for an hour, and if you constantly try to prevent and forestall all possible distress way ahead of time, if you experience suffering and displeasure as evil, hateful, worthy of annihilation, and as a defect of existence, then it is clear that besides your religion of pity, you also harbor another religion in your heart that is perhaps the mother of the religion of pity, the religion of comfortableness, right? And so he says this, we need to stop seeing our suffering as hateful, as a defect, right? Because this is also part of life, of the ocean of life, right? And then he continues and he says, how little you know of human happiness, right? True happiness, we're going to see, is the ability to embrace also the times of suffering. But we'll see that in a second. He says, how little you know of human happiness, you comfortable, benevolent people. For happiness, and this is beautiful, for happiness and unhappiness are sisters, and even twins, that either grow up together or, as in your case, remain small together. So, right, if you're avoiding your suffering, if you're always pitying people, this part of you will remain small, right? But now back to the first question. Okay, so that's the second thing we need to also, and we've studied in this class, right, about suffering and how to embrace it and how to, navigate it gracefully and so forth, right? So we know already a lot about that. What we didn't know was the religion of pity, I think. We want to help, right? Now, we are ready now for the religion of joy, right, that Nietzsche is inviting us in, and we go to 271 for that. Yeah, go ahead.
But it says that we shouldn't avoid it in the other teachings, like in Tao Te Ching, with meditation and the Upanishad, with meditation and yoga. Is that teaching you have to avoid it? So they're teaching you how to avoid it, and this is saying that you can't avoid it?
That's a good question. No, yoga meditation is giving you an anchor or a space from which you can enter life peacefully, right? Mm-hmm. So of course, there are some Hindu gurus who go off in a mountain and live by themselves, right? But the key, I think, of yoga and meditation for us, right, is to really get, also Al-Ghazali, the cleansing of the heart, to get to a space where we are clear. And from this space of clarity, we re-enter the world and are much more effective, right? So I don't know if Nietzsche would be against that, right? If it's not an escape. Some people, they meditate to escape. I mean, or they do yoga and they just do that all day, right? So that's an issue. But the ability to distance yourself and regain clarity and as to re-enter, I think is healthy. Nietzsche, of course, doesn't talk about that because he has kind of a rage of living. I don't see him sitting on a meditation cushion, right? I just can't imagine, right? Yes.
How do you think Nietzsche would react to the idea of wallowing self-pity?
Yeah, same thing. Self-pity is the inability to see the nobleness of our suffering, right? Again, a very Stoic idea. I was reading Epictetus to prepare because I was meaning to teach it, right? Epictetus says this: we are the children of the gods, and we have been given the divine essence, so that when we suffer like nobles and not like wretches. That's really the essence of what Epictetus says, right? So our suffering, in a way, we have the resources to suffer nobly, which is what he's saying. We need to go through it with grace and nobility and with an attitude of royalty, right? Because this suffering is purifying us, or, this suffering is our transformation. So self-pity, of course, there is no place for that. Does that make sense, Ujuma? Okay. Did I answer your question? Yeah, so Nietzsche wouldn't talk about it, but I think it's not out of line with Nietzsche since you are re-entering the world, right, after that. Okay, religion of joy. This is really nice, 271. Let me see. Yeah, go to the countdown from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You will also wish to help. Everybody there? Wave at me, someone who's there, so I'm not alone reading this. Ramos is, you don't have the right text, do you? That's okay. You'll find it later. 271, 6 lines from the top. Okay. So he says this, right? Only those whose distress you understand entirely because they share with you one suffering and one hope, your friends, and only in the matter in which you help yourself. So in other words, he's saying instead of pity, we should do something else, whether it's self-pity or pity for our friends, right? Whenever we're going through suffering or they're going through suffering, this is what we need to do. We need to wish, not that the suffering goes away, but we need to wish that they become, and I'm reading, bolder, more persevering, simpler, gayer, or more joyous, right? So in other words, when we're looking at someone going through suffering, we shouldn't be like, oh, let me take away the suffering from you, or let me help you not suffer, or let's avoid this suffering altogether. It says, no, bold. I want you to be bold. What does that mean? I want you to go through this. It is good for you to go through this. Take courage. This is your transformation. This is your rebirth. Be bold. That's what we have to say to ourselves and to the people around us when they're suffering. Be bold. Penetrate this, right? And then we have to tell them, be persevering. If you go through this night, you will see the dawn. If you go through this winter, you will see the spring. Don't give up too soon. Just keep at it, right? Like the country song, if you're going through hell, keep on walking. It's a great song. You guys don't know it. You don't listen to country here in New York City. It's a great song. You should look it up, right? This idea, if you're going through hell, actually, it's a proverb, I think, American proverb. If you're going through hell, keep walking and you'll make it out, right? That's the idea. And then he continues, simpler. Now, this is interesting. Actually, I'm curious what you guys think. What does it mean that I should wish for you to become simpler, or wish for myself to become simpler as I'm going through this suffering? Any ideas? That one, I don't know how to interpret exactly. What does that mean? Yes?
I feel like when you're going through suffering, it may seem overwhelming, but if you try to simplify it, it still doesn't take away from the suffering, but it just allows for you to. I think it's hand in hand with boldness and simple. You have to go through it, but when you're going through suffering, it may seem overwhelming. So by simplifying it, it allows you to go through it easier. It doesn't take away from the suffering.
And how? Give me an example of how you would do that. Like, give me a concrete example and show me the technique of becoming simpler. I'm really curious about that one, actually. And anyone can help.
For an example, let's go back to the whole like child scenario. Like trying to
I like where you're going, by the way, but I want to hear you.
when allowing your child to like go out at night, you may be scared and worried, but you have to like simplify it down to like they have to do this, they have to grow, they have to be more independent.
Okay, so a way of relinquishing control, maybe, right? We complicate things when we want to control the situation, the suffering, and how can I, right? But when we just allow ourselves to experience it or allow the other person to experience, kind of letting go, in this sense, it could be simpler, right? Kind of like how teaching teaches. Is that kind of where you're headed? Okay, good. I like that. Lanera, you had a addition.
The question was, what was the question again?
Simpler. How do we encourage the person who is going through suffering to become simpler? What does that mean? You're raising your hand without knowing why. Okay, good, but I like that one, right? Sometimes we overthink. You know, you're suffering and your brain is going 1,000 miles an hour. I could have, I should have, what do I do now, right? And you're like complicating things in your head. Maybe simpler is just like, just go through it, don't think, right? Go through it in silence. Silence your mind, silence your heart, and just allow yourself to experience this transformation, because whatever you could have done, you couldn't, because you were that person. And now you're becoming this person, which maybe will be a better person than that person. Do you see what I'm saying? The idea that we know how when we make a mistake and we're like, oh man, I should have known better. No, you couldn't, because you were that old person who couldn't know better. Even they knew better, they couldn't do better. But allow now the suffering to bring you to becoming that person who will know better in the future. But if you're constantly thinking, you're not allowing the process to take over your whole being. And you're not transforming. Does that make sense? So when you're suffering, really discipline yourselves not to overthink. I should have, I could have. You couldn't. I know I've made mistakes where I was like, damn, I knew better, but I couldn't do better. Emotionally, I wasn't at the level of my mind, right? And so I couldn't do better. And now I should just drop that and take in the suffering and allow it to transform me into someone who both will know better and will be able to do better, right? But you have to allow the process to take over every cell of your body and of your mind. And for that, you have to stop thinking, stop trying to control the past, which you cannot, or the future, which you cannot. Just dissolve. Dissolve. This is dissolve into the capable hands of suffering, right? Become dust. We didn't study the book of Job, but you did, right? No, you're in the other class. Critchell, you did the book of Job, right? Right. If we study the book of Job, we have a man whose suffering brings him into just a heap of dust. He becomes pure dust. And this is when he's able to be rebirthed into a new man, right? So we have to allow the suffering to dissolve us so that we can be rebirthed. And overthinking, you're slowing down the dissolution process, right? Stop thinking, stop doing, dissolve, right? And then allow the suffering itself to shape you into someone new, right? That's what he's saying. And finally, gayer or more joyful. This is, in fact, the joy of life, right? To really penetrate life, every aspect. Basically, he's saying, let us joyfully go into this new challenge, right? Let us see our suffering with joy and excitement that something profound is taking place, that I am becoming dissolved and rebirthed. And this, for him, knowing this is a source of immense joy. So for Nietzsche, it is possible in the middle of suffering to be extremely joyful. That this is happening to me and I am going through this rebirth moment, right? That's the idea. And then he finishes, right? I want to teach them what is understood by so few today, least of all by these preachers of pity, to share not suffering, but joy. When someone near you is suffering, or when you're accompanying yourself in your own suffering, right? Joyfully be there, not pityingly be there, right? Something amazing is taking place. This is the miracle of recreation is taking place. It's a profoundly cosmic, sacred event that is taking place at the moment of your suffering. You should be singing its praises rather than, you know, weeping its demise. That's the idea. There, I've done all of Nietzsche for you in one day. So we're good. Any questions over the whole, what we said with Nietzsche? Awesome. Let me shut off the recording.